Well, hello and welcome to the Terry Cole Show. I am so excited that you are here. I have a super special interview today with Gabrielle Stone, who's an actress, a podcaster, a director, and a best-selling author of Eat, Pray, FML, which means F My Life, and her newest book that is out right now, which is called The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. We have a long and deep conversation about love and about loss and about self-love. And she tells an incredibly compelling story about how she went from being cheated on by her husband of 2 years with a 19-year-old to where she is today. I hope that you enjoy this interview with Gabrielle Stone. I am super excited to welcome Gabrielle to the show. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi. I'm so excited to be here. I absolutely adore you and the work that you do. You're just such a powerful woman. So I'm happy to be gracing your show.
Why, thanks. You're like you're one of my new LA friends because we
Yeah.
did a great episode on your podcast, which is amazing. We'll also put all this stuff in the show notes. But I'm so excited for you. Congratulations on your second book. So now it's not like a one and done thing. This is really the sequel that's out now. And I was talking about this when I was doing the intro, but I really want to start with the first book. I really want to
Yes.
start with, you know, what inspired you to write Eat, Pray, FML. Here's the thing. If you guys don't know what FML means, I'm not sure why, but I'll tell you, it means fuck my life. So,
Yes.
and what made me laugh so hard when I first got the book and we were first introduced is that it's just so funny. Just the book itself is so funny. I love your style of writing is extremely accessible. It's so relatable, but you're really funny, which I
Oh,
appreciate.
thank you.
Even when you're talking about painful stuff, you still manage to find a way to sort of find the humor. So let's go back to Eat, Pray, FML. Tell us about, if you want to recap it, or I can recap it, whichever.
Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning. So I always say that Eat, Pray, FML kind of happened to me. I was not necessarily a writer by any means. And I was living my life as an actress and director in Los Angeles and grinding away as we do, trying to make a paycheck. And I had gotten married to who I thought was going to be my forever person. And we had been married for almost 2 years when I found out that he was having an affair with a 19-year-old for 6 months. Since the book's success, I have learned about numerous other potential women, but that was the big one that I discovered. And I filed for divorce and left. Shortly after that, I met a guy, as we do, and we just fell madly in love with each other. I mean, we had this whirlwind romance, went from 0 to 100, and everybody, including he and I, we were like, this is it. This is my person. This is why the divorce happened. Like it all makes sense now. And he invited me to join him on a month-long trip to Italy. 48 hours before we were getting on the plane, he told me he needed to go by himself and broke up with me. And I was absolutely devastated. That man broke my heart like my ex-husband never could have done. And I was sitting on my bed at my mother's house because that's where you live after you get divorced when you're 28. And I was just in a pool of tears with a bottle of wine and was like, okay, Gabrielle, you can either stay at home heartbroken or you can go travel Europe for a month by yourself. So I took a backpack and did 6 countries over the span of a month and wrote Eat, Pray, FML about it on my trip.
Wow. What I find kind of amazing from a psychological point of view is how, because I've had devastating heartbreaks where literally moving is out of the question, like moving my body. So the fact that you were like, either stay laying prone on this bed or get up and go to Europe alone for a month. What do you think motivated that?
You know, I think because it all happened so quickly, I didn't even have time to think about maybe I should just stay home and grieve this. It was crazy how quickly things in my life were falling apart. It had become some like weird fucked up sitcom. And it was like, I found out about the affair. I filed for divorce. I fell into this new relationship, a few weeks after I left my house, and we were together for this blissful month and a half. And then it all went to shit. And so because there was only 2 days for me to make this decision and figure out what I was doing, it kind of like didn't allow me to have time to go into the fear of all of it. Like, what do you mean
Yeah.
you're just going to get on a plane and go across the world like by yourself? Which had
Right.
always been one of my biggest fears. I lost my dad pretty tragically when I was 6 years old, which instilled this big fear of abandonment, fear of being on my own.
Mhm.
That was reinforced when I was 18 and lost my high school sweetheart in a car accident. So I had been dealing with this long stemming fear of abandonment my entire life. And this was the universe's very clear way of being like, okay, Gabrielle, we're going to go fix and heal all of that nonsense once and for all.
And how amazing to actually have the energy and the stamina to do that. And I had this question after reading FML. It's like you didn't have a secret plan of like, I'm going to be a actress, a director, a producer, a podcast host, all the things that you are, and also an author. So you didn't, it seems from what you've written that you didn't really have plans to become an author. So how did it come about when you were away?
Yeah, I never had plans to become an author, which is so crazy, especially because now with COVID, the last 2 years of my life have been author and podcast host, which is crazy to me, not something I ever was planning nor expecting. But when I found out I was going on this trip by myself, I remember having a conversation with the man that broke up with me, whose name is Javier in the book.
Mhm.
And after that conversation, he dropped me off at my house and said, "How are you feeling, Gabs?" And I said, like, I'm about to go on a journey of eat, pray, fuck my life. And that's the title of the book I'm going to write. Like it was like the universe smacked me with it in the face. And I bought a leather bound journal the next day and started writing in that journal the first day I landed in London. And I wrote 3/4 of it on that trip. It was really like therapy for me. And it wasn't like I journaled and then went back and turned that journal into a book. If you open the journal, it says chapter 1, and it's very, very close to how the published book ended up. So I just felt in my soul that all of this crazy stuff I had dealt with and whatever this trip was going to bring was really going to not only change my life and help me heal a bunch of stuff, but if I were able to share that and get it out to other people that are dealing with heartbreak or grief or lack of self-love and, depression and confusion and all the things that we all as humans deal with at one time or another, then it could really be life-changing for a lot of other people too.
Right. And I love the way that in the book, how you share different ways that you were like strategies that you were using to sort of get underneath these surface feelings and what was going on. And one of them is a thought onion.
Yes.
So can you tell us what that is?
Yeah. So it's so funny because when I originally came up with this on the streets of London, my first day, I remember going home and writing it down and saying, I have to change the name of this. This is such a lame name. And then I kept writing it so often throughout the trip that it eventually just stuck and never changed. So here we are. And the thought onion is my technique to take a look at your thoughts and your reactions and really examine them and see what's causing them and see what subconsciously is underneath them. So you look at it like an onion. The first layer is the superficial thought, and that is the initial knee-jerk reaction that you have when something happens, that initial response
Mhm.
that you give. And you take a step back and peel that layer back. And then underneath it is the authentic thought. And the authentic thought is the emotion that's causing that initial reaction in the first place. So like what ouch spot in you is, flashing and going off to cause that initial superficial thought. And when we take a step back and peel that back, we get to the real, what I call the meat and potatoes and the golden nuggets. And that's the subconscious thought. And the subconscious thought usually stems from a past trauma or a long-standing belief that you have, or something that's really been carried with you for a long time. And when we can get to what that subconscious layer is, that is what we need to heal or adjust in order to have different reactions moving forward.
Wow, that's so I love the framework of it, because you're really talking about finding your way to the original injury. Like, what is the thing that is still sticky or painful or needs
Yes.
your attention? And this is sort of a tactical way of how do you get to that place. Is you start with the understanding, from the way that you're describing it, that your reactions aren't always aligned with what is really going on within you. It's a
Totally. They're
reaction, right?
usually not. They're
Right.
usually not. Nor more often than not, when you look at them, you're like, oh, so I was having this reaction to Bill or Bob, but it really had nothing to do with Bill or Bob. What they said triggered A, B, and C, which poked at this wound that's in me. I guess I need to take a look at that to see why that came up for me in such a way.
Right. Okay. So the other thing that I loved in the book was the self-love cocktail.
Yeah.
So who doesn't need and want a self-love cocktail? I do,
Right.
but please share what it is.
So this whole journey, I was aware that I needed to learn how to love myself. I couldn't say that I had ever clearly, without a doubt, was able to say I love myself. And we hear all the time, you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else, and loving yourself is the most important thing, and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm ready to do that. Can anybody tell me how? And no one could give me a clear answer on this is how you love yourself. So I went on this journey, soul searching, and like knowing that I needed to find this mythical self-love thing. And I can't say that I found it on that trip. I found bits and pieces of it, but it really came when I got home and continued on my healing journey, which is why I write about the self-love cocktail in the epilogue.
Mhm.
And it's basically it's my way of loving yourself, but you sit down and you write out a list of things that you're capable of giving your soul that it loves, that makes you truly happy, not something you need from a significant other or a parent or a friend, like things that you're capable of giving yourself that make you feel joy. So my list was meditating, creating, dancing, going to the gym, eating healthy, because these were all things that I knew made me feel good. And I would put that list on my mirror and commit to giving myself at least 2 things on that list every single day. And as long as it took for me to get comfortable with that. At first, it'll be, like a stiffer drink, like a vodka martini. And then you get used to doing these things and you start adding in more things on that list to where you're doing 4 or 5 of them for yourself every day. And before you know it, you're waking up feeling so much better. And it's because you're loving yourself. And when I realized that loving yourself is as simple as giving your soul the things it loves,
Mhm.
it totally opened up my eyes and was life-changing for me. Because when we think of self-love, we think of, okay, you need to look in the mirror and be like, I love you, Gabrielle. And that's all great and dandy if you guys can do that. But I felt like a freaking fraud whenever I did it. I was like, this is weird. I'm not really being authentic right now. But when we want to show love to a mother or our significant other or a friend or anyone in our life, we do things that make them experience love. So when we're talking about self-love, why would you not do that same practice for yourself?
Exactly. I love the putting the list up and being able to like get to as many as you can, because when you really think about it, what are you doing? You're filling up your own well. And I totally agree with the whole
Yeah.
just love yourself more, where people are like, great, where's the step? Hello, what does that
Right.
actually translate to? And it really is what you're saying in respect to you're prioritizing the things that bring you joy and giving them to yourself. And so we can build this. Anyone listening can build this right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, get your list out, put it on the mirror. Because part of what you're really saying, Gabrielle, is that you have to know those things. You have to be interested enough in how you feel and in what makes you joyful to make a list of the
Yeah.
things that make you happy, realizing that that is it. It's not more complicated than that, right? Where people are like, it's so weird. And how do I love myself? And I have all these things that are wrong with me. And you're like, that's not what we're talking about,
Right.
right? We're talking
Right.
about what's right with you and what makes you feel good. So can you say from writing FML that, Eat, Pray, FML, what was your biggest personal takeaway learning from writing that book and having that experience?
Honestly, there were so many. But if I had to pick the biggest for me on a personal journey, it would be, I mentioned earlier that I had a big fear of abandonment, and that belief had really been running my life and showing up in so many of my relationships. I mean, hello, my husband at the time cheated on me and abandoned our marriage. And then this guy quite literally abandoned me 2 days before we were getting on a trip. So it kept showing up in my life,
Yep.
which means there was a big part of me that was still holding on to that belief and needed to heal it. So going on this journey and doing the amount of soul searching that I did and being across the world, realizing how very capable I was on my own, and that I actually, to my surprise, really enjoyed time being alone and being by myself. It made me realize that I'm never really abandoned, no matter what happens in my life, because I will never abandon myself.
Oh,
And that alone gave me so much peace in my life, to really start to chip away at that nasty abandonment wound.
wow, that's awesome. It's very much like self-parenting,
Mhm.
like whatever we did or didn't get, you had an early childhood loss, a tragic loss of your dad. And it's like you being sure that you won't abandon you really does comfort, I imagine, the part of you that is afraid of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it took me, at the time I was 28 years to come to that realization. And it was like letting go of this giant weight that sat on my shoulders for all those years. And it was really, really beautiful.
Wow. Is there any part of you that was surprised at the success of the book? And you have this very thriving FML community of folks who are super identified with your experience and are self healers, sort of from what they learned in the first book and now the second book.
Yeah.
Were you surprised at that? And talk a little bit about your community, and then I definitely want to go into the ridiculous misadventures of a single girl.
I mean this truly in the most humble way I can say it, but I was not surprised. And I'll tell you why. I knew while I was writing this that I could just feel that this was my purpose. This was the
Mhm.
big thing that I was supposed to go through and experience to do this book. And because of that, I knew the type of reach it was going to have, and I knew how it was going to resonate with people. I'll never forget when we were shopping it to publishers, and one of the big 5 publishers came back and said, "We just don't know if there's a wide enough audience." And I was like, "You mean like women everywhere or what?" Okay.
Who
And
was missing?
it was such a big blessing to have them all say no or say, yes, we'll take it, but we want to change it or tone it down. And because of that, I chose to self-publish, and that's the fact that totally changed my life. It gave me the financial freedom. It allowed me
Mhm.
to keep control of all the rights and do what I want with it in future endeavors. But the amount of women and men, I have a lot of male readers once they can
Yep.
get past the fact that there's pink font on the cover. But because heartbreak and grief is universal, male, female, whatever gender you identify with, like that's something that we as humans experience. And the messages and connections that I have made from people that have read this book all over the world. I have readers in Africa and Canada and Australia and Tanzania. Like it's wild to me.
Yeah.
And it's really been such a full circle moment for me to hear how my hardest year and biggest heartbreak has now helped heal so many other people dealing with things in their own life. Like, messages saying, escaped an abusive marriage because of you, or I finally had the balls to file for divorce, or I chose to stay and fight for my relationship and it's better than ever now. Just really, really incredible things to hear as an author and as a human, that I'm so grateful that all of it happened to me, and I would do it 10 times over again to end up where I'm at now.
Right. Beautiful. The way that you write in the book, you are very raw and vulnerable. You are talking true, as I would like to say, without, I don't know, without varnishing it, with really, it resonated so hard with me that it was authentic, that what you were sharing. Did you have any kind of a vulnerability hangover from that experience?
Yeah, totally. And I can write with stringing beautiful sentences together and making things eloquently roll off my tongue. That is not what I was trying to do with this book. I wanted to write in a way that allowed people to really feel like they were sitting down, having wine with their girlfriend and going on this crazy adventure with me. And I remember when I first gave the vomit draft, as they call it, the rough draft, to my mom to read of Eat, Pray, FML. And she looked at me and was like, God, Gabrielle, are you sure you don't want to change your name or take out one of the men you sleep with? And I was like, no, Mom, it's really, if I'm going to put all this out there, I'm going to do it raw and real and authentic, because that's what people are going to connect with. And that's what this world needs more of. And I think that that's why the book has been successful. And that's why it's resonated with so many people. I have people that reach out to me all the time that are like, I never read. I haven't read a book in 10 years. And I read this in 2 days, because it's real for people. And we need more of that in our life that's so sugar coated with inauthenticity and bullshit nowadays,
Right. Instagram filters, you know what I mean?
Oh
You're
my
like,
God.
please stop.
Yes.
Just stop. It does for me, it felt very much like being with you. It felt very much like, and I felt the same way with reading it, not being able to put it down, because it was very much like, what's happening next?
Yeah.
What's happening to us next is what it kind of feels like, where you're right there.
Yeah.
So lots of people I know wanted sort of a sequel, not sort of, but yes.
Yeah.
And so The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl came out this past September. And tell us about it.
I say this very, very lovingly, but I have been bombarded by my readers since the first week FML came out saying, when is the sequel coming? What happened after Europe? We have to, everyone was so invested in the story, which was so awesome on my end. And, it meant a lot to me, but it's about my real life. So I was hearing all this great feedback and saying, we need to know what happens next. But the story of The Ridiculous Misadventures hadn't finished yet because I was still living it. So I always knew that I was going to need to do some type of follow-up. If it felt authentic to me in my life, I knew that people wanted that. But it wasn't until, probably November of 2019 that I actually started writing it and saying, okay, I'm committing to we're doing a second book. And The Ridiculous Misadventures spans over 2 years of my life. FML is over 3.5 months, if you can believe that.
That's crazy.
Ridiculous. And so this was a lot more time over my life. So I had to really pick and choose what events I needed to write about that carried the story from beginning to end. And when I started writing it, I had no idea how it finished. I was like, well, we'll see when I get there. So it was a totally different experience for me. You talk about, vulnerability hangover. The second one, even more so than the first one, because, as much as you try and ignore any negativity that comes in or judgments that come in, 95% of people that read FML absolutely love it. And there's 5% that absolutely hate it, think I'm the worst thing that's ever walked this planet, and hope I go die under a rock. And that's fine. It's art. It's vulnerable art. That's part of the game. But of course, when I'm releasing the second one, I have that 5% of people chirping away in my brain and thinking, God, am I going to be judged on this? And are there things that I should have left out on this? There's things in that second book that I'm not proud of. And, it deals with people that are still in my life that I care very much about. So it was a lot of pressure to release that second book. And it was harder for me to write. There were days where I would just be in full on tears trying to get certain chapters out or rereading in the edit process. So it was tough. It was not an easy, fun process, but it's like birthing a baby. You're birthing a book. It's not always sunshine and rainbows.
No, but there's something about keeping, people finding out sort of what did happen in your life. So what can you share with us? Because listen, the book's available everywhere. Go get it. Read it for yourself. But I want to give us a little preview of what happened.
Yeah. So once I came home from Europe, I kind of fell into a really big depression. And that depression was the kind where you just wanted to sit in it. And I've had depression on and off my entire life, but it was never something that scared me the way this did, because I had been, traveling all over Europe, and it was like constant engagement with new people and new things. And then I came home and it all stopped. And it was like, oh no, you're actually 28, you're divorced, and you're back at your mom's house. And now you have to deal with the fact that this is life. And discovering the self-love cocktail was my way of getting myself out of that, because it was like, I'm just going to write a list of stuff that once made me happy and made me feel good. And if I accomplish 2 things on that list, I can get back in bed and binge watch a TV show and like be in my feels. So I dealt with that and pulled myself out of that. And there's a lot that gets covered in the Ridiculous Misadventures. Javier is a supporting character in that book.
Right.
So the 3 questions I always get after people finish Eat, Pray, FML is, do you still talk to Javier? Did Chris, one of the guys I met on the trip, ever come to LA to visit you? And what the hell happened after Europe? And all of those things are thoroughly explained, answered, and like covered in this book. And you also read about, and this isn't a spoiler if you look anywhere on my social media, you also read all about my current relationship and how that came to be, and what a crazy journey that was. And there's some travel in there too. I take a solo trip to Southeast Asia. This one was by choice, and it was totally life-changing for me. So there's a lot. It's got a little bit of everything.
I love it. I can't wait to dive in. So let's talk a little bit about grief, the grieving process. So for you, it looked like, and I don't know, because your dad passed when you were so young. I mean, does a 6-year-old grieve? I mean, I don't know that we even know how, but
Right.
It seems like once you got through FML, that part of this, the in between the books and writing this book, the grieving process is something that had to happen. So can you talk a little bit about how you dealt?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good question. Do 6-year-olds even grieve? I think we do on a cellular level. I think it stays in our body until we are old enough to realize there's something there that wasn't processed. And for me, it was an interesting trajectory, because once, not that ever goes away when you lose, your father like that, but time heals and you work through things and like therapy and, but right when I felt like that wound, if you will, had kind of healed a little bit, I lost my high school sweetheart that I was with for 3 years. That was the first, love of my life, in a car accident. And that wound was ripped wide back open. And so that always kind of stayed with me. And again, time and, but I don't think it ever fully goes away. You always have some of that with you. But for me, in in these two experiences, both with my ex-husband and the man that broke my heart after that, that's a different kind of grief. In my experience as a human, and this is just me personally, one of the hardest things that we can do is grieve a person that is still alive, because that doesn't make sense to our brain. I understand that my dad died. I understand that my high school sweetheart died. It was tragic. They did not have that choice. If you believe on a spiritual level that we all choose when we go, I get that too, but I'm saying on a conscious level, they didn't do that to me. They didn't say, screw you, Gabrielle, we're going to up and leave you. Yep. These two scenarios with the men, that was different. And especially the second guy who really broke my heart. I couldn't wrap my brain around why all of these things were being said to me and shown to me like I was the one, and it was so perfect, and I love you so much. And then him choosing to abandon and leave. That was a different kind of grief that I had never experienced before and was not prepared for. Mm-hmm. I talk about love bombing a lot on my podcast, FML Talk. And that was my first experience with that. And for anyone that's gone through it knows how intense the recovery process can be. And I feel like I was just floundering through it blindly because I didn't know terms like narcissist and gaslighting and love bombing back then when I was dealing with all of this. And I think the more that we can now talk about it and bring awareness to it, the more people can be like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy or depressed or grieving for no reason. Something was actually done to me that I'm trying to now recover from.
Yeah. Love bombing is so scary, especially if you're not a narcissist and if you're an honest person. You're right. Like, oh, this is what it is. And then you're like, oh, wait, it's not. It's so scary. I actually have done a bunch of episodes myself on love bombing and different it's things wild to look out for. Very scary. Okay, so tell everyone where they can find you. And then I'm going to ask you my last question I ask everyone on the show, but just tell us, where's the best place to find you?
The best place is probably Instagram at Gabrielle Stone. I'm also on TikTok at Gabrielle_Stone. The books are exclusively on Amazon in ebook, paperback, hardcover, Audible, which I narrate both of. And they are Eat, Pray, FML, and The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. You can find all of this on my website, which is eatprayfml.com. And that's also where you can get the merch we have for the podcast and all the fun stuff.
Excellent. Okay, so personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle and how did you overcome it?
Oh my God. First of all, when I had you on our episode of FML Talk, which we had such a massive response from, I realized that I was a high functioning codependent with not great boundaries. I think my greatest boundary struggle in my life, looking back on it, was not knowing my worth, because I always knew it, but demanding it from other people. And that is something I would let people cross more often than I care to admit. And the journeys that I've gone on over the past few years have really solidified me standing in that power and in that worth, and knowing that no one will ever cross that boundary again.
Right on, sister. You're a boundary boss.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks to you.
Well, thank you so much, Gabrielle Stone, for spending time with us today. We so appreciate it. Everything, you guys, will be in the show notes. But yeah, I can't wait for your next one. But right now, let's get through this one. It's so exciting. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I just absolutely adore you and love what you are doing for people. So thank you for having me.
Anytime.